Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barber. Here. Ms. Byrd.
Are you here? They're asking Darlene if you're here.
I'm here. Can they hear?
Okay, she was here.
Present.
Here.
Here.
Mr. Cole.
Here.
Mr. Grant.
Here.
Mrs. Rufo.
Here.
And Chairman Adams.
Here. Do we have a quorum? Okay, being as we have a quorum, we are now in session. First order of business is approval of the minutes from the April 11th meeting. I sent these out late last week for everybody's review. Are there any corrections or additions to be made to this? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, I'll make that motion. Second.
There's a motion and a second, and unanimous consent. Any objection to approving the minutes as written? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Next order of business, report from the chair. I think had one item right off the top of my head. Now it's slipped my mind. Just wanted to mention, must not have been that important. Oh, well. It had to do with the meetings. So if you haven't signed up, or if there are still public engagement meetings, Commissioner Rufo has been trying to fill up all the slots, so making sure that they are set.
Actually, Amy, can you send us, because I signed up for a bunch that were possibles, but I didn't know if you need me for all of them.
You're in all of them that you signed up. Everything that
I thought we were just supposed to sign up
for.
for things, and you were going to distribute them, so I'm actually committed to it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, unless other people,
I've been to a
well,
lot of meetings with you, Deneen.
so, actually, Pete, let me clarify. There are some places where there are 3 or 4 commissioners. It's only like in 3 or 4 of those. And so, from that perspective, if you're like, I need you to drop one.
Okay.
There are people, I think our goal is that at least two people attend every event.
Okay, I'll touch base with you.
Yeah.
Okay, the second item, I just want to remind that we have scheduled an additional meeting for next Thursday. Has that been, okay, so that's been taken care of. Whatever the city does, they've done. I'm assuming we'll be meeting here. So there's an additional meeting for May the 2nd.
3rd. Right?
No, it's the second.
May 2nd.
Okay.
If it's the 3rd, there's some students who are going to be
No.
very surprised at their final exam.
Everybody else is right. I'm sure everybody.
Okay, so just next Thursday in City Council chambers. That was all I had. Next item, public comments. Thank you all for being here. We have 2 sections for public comments, so if anybody has anything they would like to speak now, if you do, please give your name and the street in which you live, and if you would, limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Pete Barber, 434, I mean, Bertha Morris, 434 Chestnut Street. I'll be less than 3 minutes, I think.
Mayor, can we make sure that line is clear?
It's green. Can I go?
Yep.
Okay. I know I missed the meeting when you talked about council members, some possibly being elected by district, and I think you took a vote at that point, 8-1, not to do that. I would hope you'd revisit. I agree with Mary Gray on an awful lot of things, but I think one should not be concerned about having representation from maybe 4 districts and 3 at large. I don't think they're going to become renegades at all. The current planning commission of the city has 9 members, 6 represent districts and selected that way. I think they bring if they bring specific issues relating to an area, if you'd have 4 quadrants, I don't see why that's a threat to anybody. I can tell you when I was the mayor, we had meetings in each planning district for 10 years, had 60 such meetings, and I can tell you the ordinance came out of that because people bring to you specific problems in that area. The zoning around F&M came out of that with the support from Franklin Marshall. The permit parking system came out of that. The housing inspection program we developed regarding inspecting residential came out of certain complaints in certain areas. And I think if somebody lives close to people, it shouldn't be looked at as a threat. It should be looked at as something good. And if you get 4 renegade district council members, you have 3 other at large, and you have a mayor with a veto power if you end up allowing that. And that would be an extreme situation that I cannot believe would happen. So I would hope you take it up again and give further consideration to it. That's it. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, please?
Hi, my name is Lisa Stillwell. I live on West Orange Street. Multiple meeting attendee, first time speaking. So first, I want to express my gratitude for all of you for doing this work, because holy moly, so much work. I've been trying to follow along with the commission's progress, keeping up as best I can via LNP and One United Lancaster. And I'm also wanting to speak to the question about going to districts or not. Having had discussion with some of my neighbors who I'm trying to keep involved in keep apprised of what's happening. And I'm just going to read through a list of some of their questions and comments. So just, here we go. So why would we break up the city at all? Because we're already a small-ish city. Shouldn't it just be at large? And someone else said, because then that way too, doesn't that then inspire or maybe almost coerce any candidate into getting to know the whole city, right, as a whole, because we're so small. Then in terms of like logistics, oh my God, one person was like, are you kidding me? Who would determine the districts? Like, how would that group of people be selected? What would it cost to do that? And I think I'm accurate that this would have to happen every 10 years after the decennial census. And someone else was like, isn't this going to just balkanize us and turn us into the Hunger Games? I also, like Mayor Morris, hope that would not be the case, that we would be able to have good representation from our districts, that we would trust and know the people. It wouldn't balkanize, we wouldn't Hunger Games, but that does bring up a question about competition for resources, whereas now it's as a whole. And then do we want to vote for someone based solely on geography, or do we want to have people thinking broader about a shared vision for the city? And then also so that was one conversation. And then I know that you recently were talking about the question about covering for health benefits for members of city council. And I mean, that totally personally tore my heart in half, because I'm thinking, that'd be great if we could offer benefits, but I don't want to say it, it's going to sound terrible, but it's not like a full-time job. And I know that in this country, sadly, like we all pursue for full-time employment so we can get benefits, which is ridiculous in my opinion. I'm wondering if could we not, instead of maybe offering healthcare benefits, is to just increase the compensation for city council. I don't know if it's called compensation or a stipend.
3 minutes.
Am I done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, actually, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Adriana Atencio. I'm on the 100 block of East Ross Street. And I'm here to urge you to please keep City Council at large. I was a Baldwin leader through the Lancaster County Community Foundation, and through my capstone project, I got to visit cities around the country by train and with a folding bike. So no car. One of my stops was in New Orleans. I learned there was going to be a vote on eliminating a protected bike lane in Councillor Freddie King's district, District C, which covers parts of the French Quarter and Algiers across the river. I read about the lane and the benefit it had for many residents in Algiers, such as providing the only safe access to grocery stores, pharmacies, and other necessary goods. I read how it served not only cyclists, but also people who use wheelchairs and other mobility devices because the sidewalks aren't in good condition in that part of the city. It was a good thing for many people, but it wasn't liked by some people because of disruption to parking and because change can be hard. But, it's also not about bike lanes. It can be about a park, it can be about housing, it can be about whatever, sometimes things in neighborhoods, people can be a little bit frustrated when change comes along, and they can go to their city council person about that. So I sat through a 3-hour city council meeting in New Orleans, which is not your typical New Orleans activity. And I watched city councilors not even listen to a word at least 50 people said to them. And if you want to listen to a recording of this, I recorded the entire city council meeting, which is also not something most people would do. They begged them to keep the lane. Most were asking them to at least table the ordinance because how it was worded makes critical infrastructure illegal all over the city of New Orleans. But it did not matter. It didn't matter because with districting, that city councilor knows best. They know best for what's in their neighborhood. And everyone fell into place behind Freddie. They voted with King and the lane was removed a few months ago. I went on this trip over a year ago and just a few months ago, this lane was removed. It also cost taxpayers $300,000 from the general fund to remove the lane. And it only cost, I think, $25,000 to actually put it in. So that's a net loss. So I think just districting takes away the opportunity for our voices to be heard by all instead of just a few. At large lets us be represented by a diverse group of 7 voices currently instead of just one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, thank you very much. Moving on, next order of business, deliberations on form of government. I request we move to a committee of the whole and allow Mr. Cross to chair this section of the meeting, and Mr. Reddick, and Michelle, sorry, the consultants from PEL to manage this part of the meeting. So without objection, hearing none, Mr. Cross, or Mr. Reddick, or Ms.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman Adams. I'm going to lead off if I can. And we did distribute to everyone here just a updated version of the questions that have the results that have been voiced so far by the members of the commission. If you want to use that and can follow along, we're going to start this evening with term limits, and hopefully we can work our way through the balance of the legislative questions. There are several remaining ones, but starting with term limits, there are 3 questions dealing with term limits. First, should the charter contain term limits? Second, should the number of consecutive terms that any one individual can serve be limited? And if so, what should that limit be? And thirdly, should the number of total terms that any one individual can serve be limited? And if so, what should that limit be? Currently, the third-class city code, optional plan A, does not provide for any term limits with respect to elected officials. So that is the current provision that you're operating under right now. Several of the charters, do contain term limits of varying lengths, varying terms. A question also becomes, should there be a sitting out period if someone was elected for a term, they served 4 years, then they did not, for whatever reason, did not serve another term, and then came back in a subsequent election cycle and decided to run again. Those are all, questions that bear on, or issues that bear on these questions. So I would open it up for discussion at this point on the first question. Should there be term limits for members of council?
Remind me what the current term limits are?
There are none.
Oh, there's none.
There are
Okay.
none.
And what, and the term itself is 4 years?
4 years, correct, yes.
We would have to make sure that the vacancy term is not counted as a full term. So that would be something we
Right.
address if you decide on term limits.
I'll just jump in now and say I don't think we should have term limits. I think term limits, while like right now as a whole country, we have the conversation about how term limits can shake up politics. But I think really the part that's being removed from that is how term limits just really change the landscape for institutions. I'm considering like the major parties in the country, institutions in that regard, and how individuals in individualistic politics or independent politics, like for example, Bernie Sanders, would be sputtered out. It totally quashes the ability for a movement to grow out of something, in my opinion, and the leadership you might have faith in no longer being eligible to continue serving the public. While I appreciate the idea behind having term limits, I think they're not the solution.
Okay, I will jump in. I agree with Mr. Dastra. There's an interesting phenomena statistically that every year there are surveys done about whether Congress should have term limits. And it's always, yes, they should, because everybody hates everybody in the Congress except their own congressman. They love their congressman, they just hate everybody else's congressman, and they want theirs to stay forever, but everybody else. Term limits are an excuse for not being able to convince the voters. And I will argue that term limits actually remove the voice of the voter, take away their choice. So I'd vote against having term limits.
Other discussion?
I think I'm agnostic, but
Is there a consensus that there should not be term limits?
I support not having term limits as well. So.
Okay, so we'll record the consensus as no term limits. That makes it easy. That really addresses all three of those questions.
Was it really a consensus?
Well, could I ask the chair to ask for a show of hands?
Please?
Sure, okay, sure. Can we have a show of hands, those that do not want term limits?
Five, we count five?
Yeah. Raise your hands again. I thought we had 1, 2. Okay, those that would like to have term limits.
Who would like that?
Well, what if you're undecided? I mean,
Right.
Well-
I just don't, I haven't really 100% decided yet. I'm with you.
So if that could be recorded.
Well, maybe we need further discussion.
Because I feel the same. Oh, discussion?
Yeah, would you like further discussion on it?
is it from,
I mean, we're
of the
willing,
number of municipalities that have home rule, do you know off the top of your head how many have term limits?
I can't give you a number. I do know that some charters do have term limits, but I can't give you a specific number.
without having any in front of me, you're looking at term limits that are generally 12 years? Or
Yeah,
3 or 4
right.
terms, not one term?
Yeah.
The idea being it takes a while to get used to things.
Yeah.
It's more common, I think, to have a cooling off period between, so that it's not, you're not locked out after 3 terms. You could rest and come back. But we can certainly take a look at that, but the term limits is a legitimate term for discussion. But you wouldn't be looking at one term and out, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I mean, if I was going to go with term limits, I think I was thinking it would be 3 terms.
Which is 12
one-
years total.
Yeah, 1 is definitely too short.
You could also have the 3-year term, a sitting out period, and another term for a maximum of so much. You could,
I don't know. I'm not against having no term limits.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much where, like,
I've seen the benefit, in community boards and volunteer organizations, I've seen the benefit of term limits, but in this situation, so I'm not, in other parts of my life, I'm in favor of them. In this, I don't have I don't disagree with the arguments we heard tonight, but I don't object to no term limits.
So I guess thinking about that, I would be okay with no term limits.
Ms. Cook, I think you had your hand up to say something.
Liz?
Yes. I don't know what that was a moment ago. I was taking them into consideration. I'm not against term limits either, but I know what the question was. How many home rule charter municipalities of this size that you know of in PA have such term limits? You have any
I'd have to go
idea?
back and look. We'd
Okay.
have to go, if you're looking at cities this size and such, that would be not that hard to look, but
Yeah,
we didn't look at that.
I think that's my only question in the meantime, just to take a look at, in comparison to cities of the same size. I can decide at a later time once we know that.
What is her opinion?
Yeah, I'm asking Darlene if she has opinion about it. And
Please.
she said, do you have an opinion that you want to share with the
Yes
council?
or no?
Yes or no for it.
I'm just trying to listen unless they vote on something, that I would like to vote.
That's what we're asking.
Okay, well, we're voting on that right now.
Okay, so I can't hear it. What's the question?
Should there be a
Should there be
term limits on city council? Like, for example, they could have 2 terms and then ask for a rest period, or no term limits for them at all?
They should have term limits.
And they should have term limits?
Yes.
Anything to add?
Like how long?
How long? What are you thinking? Do you have any idea on that?
Well, let's decide whether or not we want term limits, then we can talk about the length.
Term limit. Oh, term limits, okay. Oh, term limits. No, I don't have any thought on that. I'm sorry. I was just thinking terms, how long their terms should be, not term limits.
Okay.
If you would like, we can do a little bit of research and come back next week with some numbers of municipalities of comparable size that have home rule charters that have term limits or that do not have term limits.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would like that too. I don't have a strong feeling for it. I could possibly be persuaded, and I understand what you were saying were some really good points with Brian and Carl, but I do think, but then I also feel there could be a benefit in having term limits, like just having 2 term limits and then having a rest period, and then they could go again. So, but I would appreciate more information on it.
We'll do that and have some information for you for next week.
As part of what the whole deliberations are so that PEL can begin to draft the charter.
Correct.
Would it be reasonable to start a draft, assuming at this point we have a consensus that we're leaning towards not, understanding that we could change that? And that could just be something, okay, we're going to blue line that out and change that when we come back to it. Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
Okay, the next one is resign to run. That's a concept that if you're a sitting elected official and you want to seek another office, you must first resign that current office that you hold before you can run or be eligible to run for another office, or I should say, be eligible to hold your current seat. So the first decision that we'd like is whether or not there should be a resign to run requirement that most legislative members resign their office to run for another office. Subsequent questions, if it's affirmative, or what level of government would trigger this resignation requirement, whether it's federal, state, county level. Currently, the third-class city code, Plan A has no requirement to resign before you run for an office. Our explanation is there for you to read, but for everyone else, it means that someone cannot hold a seat on council and seek another office at the same time. This rule can be found in other charters with the intention of ensuring dedication to the office while serving the elected term. The further decision would be to decide the level of office that requires resignation, whether it's a federal office, a Commonwealth level office, a local city or county office, or you can have all three levels up, or a combination of any one of those levels. So I'd like to ask for discussion on resign to run, and we'll start with whether or not we should have resign to run.
This is something I feel strongly about. I don't think a resign to run rule is a wise decision for the city to make. I don't understand what problem it intends to solve. If the city of Philadelphia has a resign to run requirement, and so far as I can tell from things that I've seen over the years, people are generally frustrated with that requirement because it results in people who are fairly skilled and capable having to leave their offices in order to run for something else and take a gamble, which means that sometimes they don't actually seek higher office when that might be a good result for the city as a whole.
May I make a comment to that?
Sure, your
point,
discussion,
Carl?
sure.
To your point, Jerry, that we want to know that they're committed to that position that they're in. So I understand what you're saying. Someone try to run for another office and not keeping them from being able to move along, but still making sure that someone is committed to the office, that the position that they currently hold, I think is important too. So I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just making that point.
Yeah, I think that resign the run is a good thing. And I actually take the not this primary everybody just voted in, except for independents, the primary prior where we had two city councilors running against each other for the same seat. I thought that it created toxicity. I felt like at moments it turned city council into a show. And I say this thinking about how this could negatively impact third-party politics, but frankly, I think resign the run's a good thing, and it keeps the bodies as actual functional bodies, especially if two of the individuals are running against each other. I think the only thing I might be amenable to is a city councilor, for example, wanting to run for mayor, because that's still in the realm of local politics. But even that, I'm like on the fence about. I think resign the run's a good thing. However, I do think resign the run should be able to be turned on or off by citizen referendum. I think that's one of those areas where the public should be able to decide whether or not their local candidates should or should not be able to have this function.
With home rule, citizens would have that ability.
I think they would. I don't think that would be a rise to the level of form of government if you wanted to pass an ordinance and present to eliminate.
I think you would be safe building into the charter that would be an element for referendum, and you would specifically state in the charter that it's not a form of government, it's a process of government. And with that in mind, I think the charter could state that if you had a resign to run provision, that upon referendum that could be removed without going through the entire amendment of the charter process.
Would it be conversely, if it wasn't in there, could citizens do a referendum to add that?
Yeah, I think you could do it either way.
I'll jump in right now. My thought is, I would say resign to run is not a good idea. I am very much opposed to it. To me, it leads to the idea that, well, you should resign a job. I realize, city council is a part-time job, but the argument could be made that the mayor would like to run for Congress, and therefore, in the first year of the mayor's second term, they choose to run for Congress, they would have to resign from the mayor. Now, that's the next step. We're still talking about council, but that would be the lead-in. And I wouldn't think it'd be a far reach to start saying, well, you have your job right now. You are a real estate developer. You want to run for city council. Well, obviously, somebody is going to argue you have a conflict of interest. You must resign from your company before you allow. That would be the next step. I don't think that's where we're going, but to me, it's not a lot different. And I would hope somebody on city council who is a good city councilor would want to run for mayor. And again, knowing that there is a certain level of a roll of the dice to that, I wouldn't want to lose the person who is a good councilor because they weren't able to win in the mayor's race. In a way, you could end up with the argument that you lose two good spots. The person who's doing well on council and who a lot of people would have thought would have made a good mayor, and now you don't have either. So I'm opposed to resign to run.
Yeah, and I feel like the other thing that we've talked about around a variety of topics is that, whether somebody is, distracted because they're running a race, or whether because they, sometimes people just, they get elected and then they become less effective by either non-attendance or stuff. There will always be an opportunity to not reelect somebody. It might be a year or 2 or 3 away, but I guess what I'm saying is I agree. I don't think we should have resigned to run, because if somebody becomes uncommitted, then the voters can address that at the next election. So.
Add one more just addition to what I had said. If anybody else wants to speak, I don't want to. If the city council is a 4-year term, and I will say that if you want to run for Congress, running for Congress is a 2-year commitment. It's not Labor Day to November of the year of the race. So we would be making a determination the minute that they say, well, I'm going to run, they have to resign. And you could effectively be losing multiple years of somebody's seat. And I guess, and like so many things, I just don't see the benefit. I'm more concerned with the process of running for another office is a long-term commitment, and that would have them resigning very early on. Yeah.
And then, I would add one more thing, which is I think, for the most part, we want, as many people serving on city council to have been elected by the voters. And if we, the more situations we create where somebody is forced to resign and then replaced by a decision of city council, the more we invite people to be serving who weren't elected by the voters. So I think I'm sort of another instance of why I would say I do not think we should have resigned to run.
My concern is, sorry, were you?
No, you're good.
My concern is just showing that the people that are on council, that they are showing a commitment. And I know we did have that issue, or have had it throughout the years, where it just seems like, if they're able to run, then they're doing that, and multiple people are doing that, and then you lose people at once, or I guess that would be a concern why I would say I might be for that. I'm not saying I'm leaning, I understand, like, you guys make some really good points, but I'm trying to hear the other side of the coin.
Yeah, like as an individual who has run for offices before, I hate the idea of resign to run. But as a person thinking about the dynamics of politics in Lancaster County, I think it's a positive benefit because, like, right now the urbanized core and the boroughs tend to be where you have Democrat-leaning populations and everywhere else otherwise. And I think the relocation of the Republican facility is an example of how politics have literally shifted. Like, no longer is the city, frankly, to some extent, I saw that move as the city's not really on top priority for Republicans, frankly. I saw it in that way. I think that I am worried about candidates winning an office and using incumbency advantage to try and bolster the strength that person has in another election. And I'm really trying to see the individuals we have in our local government focus on local government, which is why I'm okay with somebody if they want to go from city council to mayor, because we have those disagreements naturally as part of our function of government. But I really am uncomfortable with the idea of somebody being on city council and wanting to run for county commissioner or wanting to run for state house or senate, or especially federal offices. I really think we need stability and gotta build that into the charter.
I was going to say, I'll say real quickly, I think when you get to the state and federal, yes, I do think I do lean that way, because I think that's, as you're running for those positions, I would imagine that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I think that focus, I mean, how are they going to have full focus on that and do their job as well? And I guess I'm looking at, like, can they maintain their focus? If they want to run for something, you know, maybe if they knew that ahead of time, or they have 4 years so that they can, you know, do what can they stay focused for 4 years and then run afterwards for that type of position if they're going to do that? Instead of kind of like the way it is now, they just can have that option, like, I could just do it anytime I want. And that's my concern.
Similarly, yes, what I was thinking is that a council member can serve their full term and then seek another office, as opposed to jeopardizing the possibility of having to resign their seat in order just to run for something else. So I think that there's still an opportunity to run for another office once they've committed their time to that position that they're in. On the other hand, I don't know where the DNC falls in this, but we had an example of a mayor running for a delegate to the DNC. The mayor did not have to give up that seat. So I guess it just depends on the level of government. And if we're talking about House of Representatives, senators, all of that.
Yeah. You mean the delegate to the convention?
Yes.
Yeah, that wouldn't, we weren't
That's not
considering
that
that.
level. Right.
These are elected government offices. That is a party office.
Yeah, I'm
it's
just
a private
saying that's an
organization.
example of not having to give up your seat
Right,
for something
right.
else like that, similar, right? But again, I feel like council members, maybe if they want something bigger and better, they could wait till their term ends. I'm not saying yes or no either, I'm just making a point.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have to remember is that council is, you know, people that are on council are running for their own reelection. And so the concern of somebody politicking and running for election, it's like that happens all the time, just as people run for their own reelection on city council. And so I think the concern about diverting their resources into something else, it's like, well, that's already an inherent nature of being on city council and running for your own reelection. So I think that's a little bit of a red herring to think that that's taking away from their focus on serving their office.
I disagree. I think.
Tony, can I finish, please? Yeah. And so I think that we just need to really understand, I mean, this is the way politics works, is that, you know, people are running for election, running for re-election. And frankly, I think that it's a good sign if we have people that are on city council or in another local office that, you know, if they are having the leadership qualities that they're demonstrating, that they could potentially move on. I think, you know, the potential loss of them if they run for office and lose their office, or, you know, we lose the time while they are and lose their service during the time that they're running for another office, I think we're missing on some opportunities of good leadership within the community.
What is the cycle of elections? Like, so local municipal elections versus state, are they happening at the same time? They're not,
No,
right?
no.
They're
Municipal
like
are,
every other opposite?
yeah, municipals are every 2 years, every odd numbered years. Generally, well, the feds go back and forth, but generally
Yeah.
they're even numbered years.
Okay,
And then county is sometimes municipal, sometimes not.
right.
I want to jump back, and I apologize because I thought the first pause was end of the comment. I really gotta disagree that the idea of running for these higher offices doesn't affect your ability to be effective on a local level, and I actually think this body's a good example of that, because the home rule procedures, for example, explicitly outline that we can't do anything related to gun control, for example. That's a really hot button issue in American politics right now. So if you, on a local level, someone's opinion on gun control, frankly, is null and void because they have no power to do anything. But on a state level, those issues start to matter. So I think that's the biggest distinction is when you start running for these higher offices, you get into a different series of issues, and it might detract from the issues that you have to focus on a local level to make a government run effectively.
I think the general thinking is no on resign to run, but there's an undercurrent of maybe the office matters. Maybe the level matters. It seems that, maybe I'm characterizing this wrong, but it seems that local, no, it's okay to hold a job, but perhaps the state and federal becomes more of a burden. It's more of a distinct difference in policy making, and
Yeah.
am I reading that right?
I think you hit it right on the mark for me, yes.
Do we want to rephrase the question and ask, if you want to run for president, state rep, House of Representative, or senator at the federal level, you should resign?
Yes.
Let me take some notes. Hold on. Fred, you got notes? Yeah. Right?
And likewise at the state level, is that correct?
So let's run with the feds, right? That's pretty harmless. Show of hands, who would consider a resign for run if it was a federal level office? I can't. Chairman, could you count? Because I
get four.
Four? Okay, because I can't see.
Darlene?
Yeah, we haven't asked Darlene's opinion because she's,
Darlene? Okay, so we're now discussing resign to run. And so what's on the table now is you don't have to resign for like a local or a county position of office, but we were thinking that if you were running for either a federal or a state position, that you would have to resign. How would you want, do you want to discuss, or do you have a decision? Well, there's 4 people
Excuse me.
for it.
Can we have public dialogue about
yeah,
this?
she has to be able to hear it. Yeah, we need to hear it back and forth.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead, Darlene.
Thank you, Peter.
And then what was the other comment? What is everybody thinking?
What is the other comments?
Yes, how are the other commissioners feeling?
Anyone? I mean, we're discussing it, some reasons for it and some reasons against it, or for different. We began with just resign to run, and then we ended up coming up with kind of okay, maybe only for federal or state positions.
Yeah. If she's, Chairman, if she's not listening to
Yes,
this,
I
we
mean,
can't just call
we're
in
gonna have to
for-
make a choice here. Is she, is Commissioner Byrd actually participating in the meeting, or is she just being called to vote?
I'm just trying
I'm
to.
listening.
Maybe give
Okay.
her the other microphone. It has more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, have you been listening to the deliberations?
I didn't hear all of them. Some of them I hear. It's
Okay.
going in and out. And I keep texting when it goes out. So just go ahead and vote. It's okay. If I disagree, I'll make my motions known at the next meeting.
Okay. I take that she has no opinion, so effectively an abstention.
All right, and we had four, and we have assumed 4 against, is it? Because there's 8 people here?
Show of hands,
Show of hands for
against resign to
opposed?
run.
Okay, so consistent. So no resign to run for federal. We have to go through the process. Resign to run for state? Show of hands? 4? Like 3?
Amy, where are you on this?
I don't think you should resign to run
Okay.
for state.
All right. And I'm going to, just to close the loop.
So do not resign to run for a state office.
Okay, fine. So we have enough, so that we're narrowing it down to county, and I can read the tea leaves. County's not an exception? You want to call the,
Yeah, that's fine.
no,
County. and
No one
local.
wants county? Okay, so it doesn't, resign to run is not off the table as a charter item.
I do have a follow-up question to that.
Mhm.
Do we maybe want to explicitly outline in the charter that the citizens could choose to opt for resign the run at a later date, or do we want to leave that out?
So I think that's like across the board.
Right.
There are elements, that's one of the benefits of home rule, is there's an avenue for citizens to say, we want to put this on a ballot and vote. We don't have that option right now. So that's a benefit of home rule in general. We just can't, citizens can't use that lever for, what do you guys call it? The structure.
Right.
They can use it for you used the process of government, but not the structure. But, so I think that would be a really important element, which we haven't gotten to in the public engagement and education.
There would be provisions in the charter to support what Ms. Rufo is saying, to allow for a citizen referenda on issues that don't impact the form of government, but on other issues.
Maybe that's
As well as
something-
the ordinance of council could put it on the ballot.
Correct.
Under home rule.
I mean, I don't know if there's something, how we can mention that in the charter, but
It's already in the
perhaps we-
law. It's like a lot of things that we're trying to get the understanding. The home rule charter law encompasses freedom to do what you need to do without enumerating every single possibility,
Right.
because it's beyond the human mind to do that. So it opens up the possibility for local decision-making. So if an initiative referendum process is adopted and citizens want to resign to run, Marty,
I think I can maybe help clarify a little bit here. So as a matter of law, there are going to be a number of items that the citizens will be able to initiate referendum on. You're also going to have a referendum section in your charter that, in addition and/or as explanation of that law, will specify ones that you clearly want to be available by referendum, not to exclude, but to essentially make sure people do understand that they have that right.
I like that.
Okay, thank you.
resign to run for, as a principal is off
That was my understanding, yes.
the separate office this election?
Okay, that really moves us past the next question as well. So,
Or does it for the?
yeah, now we're looking at ability to serve and removal of office.
Give me a break, let's just.
Actually, I would say there's a question on running for two offices at the same time.
No, it's not. So,
This, I would say that's a separate issue.
yeah, you can
Yeah, no,
run for-
we're back on the same page.
Okay, so the Johnson rule.
Resign to run is not required. This becomes a non-issue. It becomes a non-issue, Jerry.
Page 9. I'm looking at page 9.
Wait, yeah. My interpretation, if you don't, without resign to run, we can run for two offices at the same time. You can run for council and whatever state represent at the same time. Right. Should that be? Running for two offices. I understand what you're saying. You resign before you submit a petition.
So I've done this before, actually. I've actually registered to run for two offices at the same time. I later withdrew for personal reasons, but it says like may current office holders run for two offices. I mean, I think that we're generally of the mindset if we're not going to resign to run, we're okay with this, and I hope that we can kind of just move forward from this. If the general consensus is that it's okay to run for two offices at the same time. I especially wouldn't want to limit somebody who's not an office holder from being able to sign up to run for office, because that sometimes is a form of protest or demonstration to just put yourself on the ballot.
Okay, I would make the argument that, well, first of all, we're only discussing whether a person running for city council may run for two offices. At this point, no other item. So effectively, what it would be is, could you effectively run for city council and mayor at the same time?
County commissioner.
Or city council and county commissioner. I think that's the discussion. And like I said, that brings up to me I don't know if it's called that, the Johnson rule in 1960, where Lyndon Johnson was running for both Senate, for his Senate seat and for Vice President of the United States. Obviously, when Kennedy won the race, he resigned from the Senate, but he was running for 2 federal offices. Texas at the time had that was under the jurisdiction of the state. I assume it still is, and Texas did not disallow that, but a lot of states do. I will say that from a perspective of someone running for city council, I would object to someone running for city council and another office at the same time. As for whether the mayor can run for county commissioner at the same time, we'll get to that when we talk about the mayor. That's my opinion. I say no, you should only be able to run for one city office, or you should, if you're running for city council, you should only be allowed to run for city council.
I know you were trying to work through whether this is a separate question than resign to run. I think the foremost resign to run for advocate indicated his preference to move on. PEL, what did you determine? Do you see this as a separate question, or?
Okay, resign to run means if you are going to go to another office, before when you first circulate your nominating petitions, you have to resign the office that you hold, okay?
Yeah.
If that's not restricted, which we've decided not to restrict that, we're allowing that, now we have to decide, do we want to allow someone to run for 2 offices at once? You're not restricting it by one section, will you allow it? I know it sounds like 2 heads of the same coin, but are you allowing someone to run for 2 offices at the same time, rather than saying you cannot even circulate petitions? If it's 2 heads of the same coin, I'm happy with saying it's resolved.
If you don't mind me asking, at what point, I'm trying to do an understanding of what point it becomes one and not the other. So let me ask you this, is resign to run, that would be a rule that kicks in earlier than what you're describing here? Okay, so is it the difference between circulating nominating papers and being on the ballot?
Yes, circulating nominating papers. If you circulate nominating papers, you would have to forfeit your office. Remember we talked about forfeiture?
Yes, got it.
You would not be qualified to serve in your office if you ran for another office under resign to run.
Okay, and for this, what we're saying is,
If you get yourself on the ballot, right?
You can circulate 2 nominating petitions, get enough signatures, and run for 2 offices at the same time.
Like city council and somebody
Mayor.
else.
And mayor,
I see.
yeah,
City council and
county commissioner, city council and judge.
But it would really just be those, city council, mayor, county commissioner, because
judge,
Judge,
constable.
treasurer, controller.
Yeah, it'd be a lot.
Trying to simplify
But just those
They can do those offices.
Civil records.
All right, well, I'll just say that, as far as I'm concerned, if we don't see an issue with resign to run, I don't see why you also cannot seek 2 separate offices, and I would support the ability to continue to do that for the same reason that I felt the way that I did about resign to run, which is that I think there are smart and capable people, and they should have the opportunity to seek higher office, and we want to encourage that so that we can get those smart and capable people into that higher office with a little bit of knowledge that they may be able to retain their smart and capableness in their current seat should they not win. So that's how I feel.
Is capableness a word?
I don't think it is.
Okay, just for point of order, okay, yes.
I have a question, Jerry. Your PEL recommendation is that we prohibit running for 2 offices at the same time. Did you say why that was?
No, what we said is if resign to run is not included. In other words, if you decided earlier not to let resign to run, which you did, you said no resign to run. We're saying, should there be a restriction on running for 2 offices at once? That's all. We don't.
You had written that your recommendation is that you should not.
No, that recommendation is to you.
It's a forgotten question.
What is your recommendation?
Oh, okay.
No, not my recommendation to you. The recommendation from the Government Study Commission for the charter is what?
So are we recommending to prohibit
Yeah,
running for
that's
two
my,
offices?
that's
I
my
understand.
shorthand.
Gotcha.
This is from an edited document. My shorthand is, what's your recommendation, folks?
Understood.
So,
Thank
good
you.
catch. Thank you for that. You can read your own stuff 10 times and somebody will see something that you missed.
I would tend to agree with Carl. It's like if we have good people and they happen to be running for two offices, let's, God bless them.
Okay, it's not a prohibition.
That's a yeah.
Further discussion?
I don't know how they would do it. I mean, that's kind of a lot.
Yeah, I
mean,
guess-
if
Doesn't matter.
if they're capable and they want to, and they, I suppose, then,
I feel like that. I
right.
feel like that. If they're capable and they want to, by all means.
All right.
I'll join the crowd. You convinced me. I think we've decided, the consensus is, that's fine.
Just, one scenario that I would raise, what if an individual was running for council and for mayor and won both races? What happens at that point?
We already have an issue of the vacancy. The question is, would the question be whether they get sworn into both seats and then immediately have to resign one?
Oh, good.
Can I point of inquiry this? This happens today. I feel like I heard something in the last, not this cycle, but last cycle where it happened. It had for township supervisor and stuff like that. How is that handled?
As the solicitor, is there any, do you have any knowledge of what has happened in the past?
If you have a prohibition that they can't hold two offices at once.
If there's no prohibition.
If there is no prohibition, that the offices aren't counterproductive, you have a built-in, the hypothetical post here is you may end up with something as you move through the mayor, which is you may have a provision that says the mayor cannot also be a member of council, right? So we're at a place where we're not quite with all the facts, but I think if you assume that there will have to be a vacancy in one of the two positions, then you're at whatever the vacancy filling provisions are for that, which would then be presumptively until holding that office until the next municipal election, which you already determined. But I think
I guess
using the mayor and council as an example, I'm going to assume that at some point when you get to mayor, you're going to say the mayor cannot also be a sitting member of council. You would end up having a vacancy that has to be filled then by the existing members of council in accordance with the provisions of the charter as you draft.
Right, we already have incompatibility for elected offices for council.
Right.
Correct.
So you'd have to choose between,
Right.
if you were lucky enough, you would have to choose, so.
I'm satisfied with that outcome.
Yeah.
And I actually will kind of concur in that, the way we have things set up is you would be putting a burden on a person who was elected in the same year as the mayor from ever running for mayor. But in order, if you plan to run for mayor, you would have to make sure, and from city council, you'd have to make sure that you got elected in one of the years that the mayor was not up for election, so that you would not have to resign. You would not have, you'd be able to run for both. So yes, I agree. I have no problem with that.
What the recommendation is?
The consensus is there should not be
A prohibition?
a prohibition on running for two offices.
Right, there should not be a prohibition. It's covered elsewhere. Okay, now we can go to the.
Serving in two is different, and we've already discussed that.
Yeah, it's a qualification, you can't have.
Yeah.
Now we go to page 10, ability to serve and removal from office. Should there be a means to remove a member of the legislative body, council, from his or her office if they have been found to be incapacitated or incompetent by an appropriate court after an extended period of time? If so, what should that extended period of time be? And if they are convicted of misbehavior in office or any other infamous crime. Again, there's no guidance currently on forfeiture of council vacating an office holder other than the basic requirements that exist right now for eligibility.
So we're saying a council can vote to remove a member.
Correct.
You said council can vote to remove a member?
Not currently, but
Not
under.
Currently,
But you
that
could-
is the question. Should council be able to remove a member, and if so, under what conditions?
I feel like this is where the ethics, the idea of incorporating an ethics body into the charter comes in handy. I'm not totally comfortable with the idea of letting council vote off another member of council, because what is misbehavior in office? What is an infamous crime? I mean, we have these conversations on a national level. I think there needs to be a level of separation, but I do think a mechanism for removal is appropriate. I mean, I remember back in, I think it was 2016 or 17, there was a counselor who fell ill, for lack of better words, and they weren't in council for a whole year. That was a seat that just went essentially vacant for a whole year, but wasn't officially vacant. And then later on, this whole conversation about vacancies came about when I think it was Barbara Wilson resigned to go into the housing board, and that's really where the conversation of vacancies has started for many people, but for me, it started back when there was a year-long period where we essentially had a 6-member council, and I'm not totally comfortable with that, even though I feel for the person who is in that position.
I think that if someone has been found incapacitated or incompetent by a court, or if they've been convicted of a crime, misbehavior, and I mean, felony, misdemeanor, I'm not sure at what level, but I think that those are relevant reasons to remove a council member.
Can I ask a question on the second part of that, the infamous crime? If I remember correctly, the state constitution has something in it around infamous crimes. And while it doesn't define that very narrowly. It's the subject of a lot of election law. So it's not well defined, but a court would be able to say, based on past precedent, what constitutes an infamous crime. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, basically a factual analysis based on decisions that have been made in the past. State courts, not just Pennsylvania courts, but state courts all over the country differ on what that definition is. With a lot of laws, it changes over time. So what might have been infamous, 200 years ago, is not infamous today. And we can all think of a few things that were crimes and deemed crimes back when the U.S. Constitution was adopted that are no longer deemed criminal behavior. You can, in the charter, you can set specific crimes that you deem to be appropriate for removal, and you can add kind of a catch-all. That's what's listed there is, as you've pointed out, is a catch-all category that's been used both at the state level under our state constitution and other states. That's left more for the court to determine on a case-by-case basis. Did that answer your question?
I believe that there's actually just something in the state constitution that prohibits people. Like there's in York, the current mayor is Michael Helfrich, and when he went to take that office, there was a suit against him, I think by the York County Democrats, saying, because he got elected as a Republican, you were convicted of, I don't know, some drug possession charge. It's an infamous crime. You can't be seated. I think there was a school board person this happened to in Harrisburg, and then the court decides. I'm only bringing it up because I imagine people are uncomfortable with the concept of what constitutes an infamous crime, but I was under the impression that this is actually fairly well-trod territory in state courts.
I don't have a specific answer for you right now as to what that standard is. I'd have to research a multitude of questions, but it has been litigated multiple times, both in the Pennsylvania courts and in other courts, on a case-by-case basis as to whether the crime that was committed, and you're correct, in York, that was an issue that was litigated as to whether I believe it was a drug possession charge, but I'm not altogether certain, constituted an infamous crime.
In that example, was that conviction while he was serving in office, or that was from his past?
From his past. The state constitution is supposedly quite actually, punitive around this subject.
Section
So if somebody was convicted of a felony, even though they've completed their sentence, whatever it would be, they may be prohibited from serving. Is that what?
Why don't we just read it? State Constitution says, removal of civil officers. All civil officers shall hold their offices on the condition that they behave themselves well, and shall be removed on conviction of misbehavior in office or any infamous crime. That's what the state constitution.
Conviction in office,
So that's while they're in office, right?
Right.
Not, which makes
Not
sense to me.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what our question is. Number 3 is if convicted of misbehavior in office or any other
right.
crime.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that standard. It's
This is-
already in the state
Yeah,
constitution.
if someone's serving on council, they break the law, they get convicted, can other council people say, because they refuse to resign, you're no longer qualified to sit on council?
And it would still be a vote of council.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I agree with that they should be taken off, but I do think that to have the people on council do the voting to do that is not the optimal for me. I think that ethics board should be the ones who should be doing the vote or the removal.
I think while council could take the action, it still could be litigated and would probably end up in state or federal court as appropriate.
Yeah, without knowing more about what transpires, about what the ethics subcommittee defines for us, I'm kind of on the fence, but I do think we should have a means of removal, whether that is city council, the other city council members doing that, or the ethics board. I'm not sure we know yet, because we don't know what the ethics subcommittee has defined.
Well, I think, but sorry.
Hold on, Ms.
Actually, no,
Cook is-
you guys, you were
she's
waiting.
gesturing.
I am feeling kind of the same way. Anyone should be removed from office if they're convicted of a crime, whatever that is. But I don't think that their fellow councilmen that they've served with, I don't think that they would be the ones, they should be the ones to make the decision. I don't know if a solicitor would be the right person to jump in on that or no.
Solicitors like to avoid controversy, so let's start with that.
So do city council members.
This formerly anonymous city solicitor would say, no, I actually don't. I don't think that the solicitor should make the decision, mainly because the solicitor is going to have to be providing legal advice to the city, which may include city council. So the action really should, in my opinion, be one that city council or if city council doesn't want to do it, can it go to a court by petition of whether that's the mayor, the administration, city council, or otherwise to decide it, but somebody's going to end up defending the body or the party that proceeds to do this, whether that would be, on petition of the city to have the person removed, on petition of city council, and there are pluses and minuses to allowing both. You could limit it to one. So, hypothetically, you could have city council not wanting to do this, but the administration could make that call. You could have it as an either or. Either body may petition a court for removal. Or you could have it as only one could petition the court. But in either way, in general, the city solicitor's office is going to be required to provide legal advice and support for whichever body is taking that action. I don't think you should make it a decision of another, say, the executive branch. I think if you're going to not have it be a decision of the legislative branch, then it should be a provision that requires it to go to court for a judge to make the determination as to whether they should be removed.
So, and I'll circle back. I bring up the ethics idea because I feel like there's a lot of questions we have about a variety of procedures. Like, frankly, even districting, in my view, falls into this line. I think there's a lot of problems. We're like, well, what's the solve? And I feel like that's where an ethics board or ethics commission can come into play. Maybe even the idea of districting playing out in an ethics board. And I know that we're not in subcommittee, and I'm just talking freely here. But I've even thought, like, you know, as far as filling vacancies, maybe that's where the pool of people is from a separate body, like a body that's elected for a specific purpose. They're getting essentially practiced and rehearsed in the functions of government. For me, that's a logical step to fill a vacancy. I'm rambling on, but I just wanted to illustrate why I'm saying ethics is because I think there's a big conversation to be had about what the ethics section of the charter is able to do and not do.
Okay.
So our first question is, should there be a means to remove?
Right. And what would that means be? So should there be a means of removal?
Could we
Show
look at just that one?
That's all. That's the first
Look
question.
at, should there be,
Right.
yes or no?
That was our first
Should there
question.
be a way to get somebody out of office?
So yes
Yes
or
or
no?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so there should be.
Yes.
Yes.
Now we can look at, okay, why should we remove them?
Right.
Should somebody who's sick not be allowed to stay on council? Should somebody who's convicted of a crime, and so on? Yes.
I think that, so I told you what I thought on the criminal conviction side, so then I want to talk about the incapacitation. You said, I think you're just trying to be swift about it, like someone who's sick. No, I don't think someone who's just sick. I see a scenario where maybe the person is under guardian, like a legally appointed guardian or something like that. Not simply just having a medical power of attorney making decisions for a temporary situation. Like, I don't know, the governor goes under the knife or something and the lieutenant governor steps in. That person doesn't become not the governor anymore.
No 25th Amendment type thing.
Yeah, so the threshold to me is quite high.
Well, the question we have posed is by a court. That's the threshold we're
Yeah,
asking the question.
incapacitated or incompetent.
Incompetent by a court.
So
So,
not like.
I guess a guardianship would be appointed by a court.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah.
So
Yes.
somebody,
Yes.
Right.
so somebody could go to the court, petition the court and say,
Yes.
this council person has had a stroke, they haven't been in a meeting in 7 months. I'm petitioning the court to declare them incapacitated, but they couldn't do that. Okay.
So, I mean, I think we need to clarify two things. There is a legal standard for incapacitation or guardianship, and there are legal proceedings that are done for that. So when the court appoints somebody as their guardian, they are giving somebody legal rights over decisions of somebody else. When they declare somebody incapacitated, and in the context of a guardianship provision, they're doing that because that individual is not capable of making certain decisions on their own. So there are two different questions that are really embedded in this. One is, do we want city council, the administration, somebody to be able to petition a court to say this person is not capable of performing the duties of city council? That's different from actually being declared incompetent or having a guardian appointed for you.
I don't want to do that.
Are we assuming that they've already been declared that and then just coming in and saying, hey, is that what you're saying? Or
He's asking how you get to this, to the finding of incapacitation.
but I thought that was declared by the court. I thought that was something that.
But that's what I'm.
Not if nobody brings the court in.
Correct. The court doesn't just, the court is not sitting with us. So, a common example of a family type example is a parent, has gotten up in age, maybe having dementia, maybe not, but child believes that the parent needs to have somebody else formally take over the right to their finances and to making decisions about their medical condition and how they can be treated. You don't just get to choose that, right? So as an adult, we're deemed to be competent until a court determines we're not. The standard for that is very high, and a petition has to be brought to court, asking for the court to appoint somebody to be able to, it's asking the court to make two determinations. A, that the person is not capable of caring for themselves, and B, to designate somebody else to do that for them. And so it is a medical and can be a lengthy process, and usually involves significant medical testimony.
Right. So we would not, I get what I'm saying. So it wouldn't be appropriate for city council to petition. The idea is somebody else in that person's life would have petitioned the court, then they would have been
Right.
deemed
Exactly.
incapacitated.
Just like,
Then
some
city
citizen.
council at that point, city council could,
Right.
Take
But if
action
they've
at that
already legally been declared incompetent by or
Right.
incapacitated by a court. Then what you're saying is then we can now say, oh, okay, due to that, we would like to have them voted off of council.
yeah. And
Removed.
because the bar is so high, I'm not tell me if I'm being naive. I'm not particularly worried perhaps that some citizen decides they don't like Counselor B, who has not been at 2 meetings, and they go to,
So I'll punt this a little bit to PEL, but my assumption here is that when you take the standard of if somebody, I mean, it's almost like if you've been convicted of murder, that's one of the lists of felonies per se that maybe would disqualify you from serving. But if you have been declared incompetent and or had a guardian appointed for you, is that an automatic disqualifier for having you serve? It's not necessarily a vote of council to then say, should they no longer? It becomes, this is a legal proceeding that's occurred. I would assume that most charters drafted in the modern era would take the position that if you are declared incompetent by a court of competent jurisdiction, that you are no longer qualified to be a member of city council.
And the means to vacate that.
It does go back to qualifications.
So it'd be effectively the same as somebody dying.
Unable to perform the duties of office.
A dead person would have a hard time performing
Yeah,
the duties of
as-
office. So it's a horrible analogy, but it's a similar concept. It's they no longer can do it, they're off.
Right.
And this is putting the bar, raising the bar to what determines they can no longer do it. A court determined it.
Right. Isn't it
It's
that way?
preordained. It was already determined by somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't it
That's the
many,
trigger.
many positions that are like a licensed individual, if they're deemed incapacitated, they just lose their license. Like in that sense, you're saying, hey, they're ruled incapacitated, then automatically they should just be,
Yeah, should your council have a means to pursue that?
Yeah.
Or should the city under its charter have a means to pursue that?
yeah.
And we're saying, I hear yes, and incapacitated by order of a court is also a yes.
Yes.
That's-
Say yes to
we're
that.
just talking about removal. We're not talking about somebody deciding they want to run for office.
No,
No, this is.
Right.
this is a sitting person,
Okay,
Deemed
yeah,
incapacitated.
doesn't show up for meetings.
Right.
All of a sudden, you hear that they're incapacitated and they've been ruled incompetent by the court. But not by action of the city council saying,
right.
go to court, but by someone else's
I'm
action.
comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
See, we're all good?
Yeah.
Everybody's good,
Yeah.
right?
I would actually like to talk a little bit more. So I do understand completely, if someone's sick, they shouldn't necessarily be removed from council. But I think there does need to be some communication between an individual who may be sick and not participating for an extended period of time. Just because from what I recall, it was more like now we live in an era where the use of technology has become more common and we have more participation from a distance. But at the time, just as an observer, as a member of the public looking at my council, I was like, where is this person? So I am curious if there should be a period of time with essentially no communication. Would it be warranted to put it up for a vote whether or not the person should continue? I know we've talked about the idea of not wanting to remove someone from a position because they were elected to fill that position, but I do think that's an important conversation to have.
All right, we can address that on charter drafting, as you see this language.
Yeah.
That could be a subsection, we're missing this part. What if someone is not showing up for 6 months? And we find out he is they are incapacitated, meaning they don't have the capacity to perform. Then do you seek their removal? But then I think we can finesse that within the chart, within language.
I think so. But Mr. Dyster, I think what you're referencing is a situation where the individual would not be necessarily ruled incompetent, but simply is not performing the duties of office. Is that
They've
correct?
just abdicated their duties
Right.
essentially.
And that's why we have for a reasonable period of time. So
Okay.
if you're incapacitated, you're not showing up, should there be a means for the city to seek vacancy of that office? And then it still has another process to go through. Okay.
And I think we're leaving the second part of that, dealing with a infamous crime, if you will. That would be up to the courts to basically determine, correct?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
fine with that.
I have a question, though. This might be far-fetched, but the same way there are civil service components of the city that kind of oversee the hiring of policemen, firemen, and such, and the other things for engineering, the Civil Service Board for engineering employees. Similar to that, could something like that be created for, as we were talking about earlier, the city council person that has committed a crime? Could that be something in it that we could add to the charter to create that kind of office who would consider voting that person off of city council versus the solicitor versus the rest of the city council members? It's a curiosity question.
You're
John.
looking for
John.
another organization to
Yes,
judge whether they're fit
yes.
because of?
No, not to judge whether they're fit. A city council person who is convicted of a crime. And we were just talking about who would make that decision, who would vote on that? City council, the solicitor? It didn't seem fit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
to remove.
Vote to remove that
Right.
person.
I think I think the decision was going towards the city can petition a court to determine whether qualifications are still being met for that seat. So if one of the qualifications is you cannot be a convicted felon, we'll have to spell that out, you cannot be a convicted felon, then the court would have the ability to rule that person's been convicted, appeals are exhausted, they no longer qualify for the seat on the court. And they would
Yes,
order
I was
them.
just curious, now that we went past that, I was curious, could something like that be formed in a charter, that it be a different entity versus a petition to the court? I'm just curious.
Well, you want it to be a representative of the city that answers to the voters. So that
Oh,
would
okay.
probably be the legislative body,
Okay.
because they're taking the action to petition the court on behalf of the city. Somebody's got to take action on behalf of all the taxpayers, or all the
I
residents, I should say.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think, given
I
the
understand.
legal issues that could be involved, I think you would want to have the court rule rather than another
Sure.
entity, if you will,
Sure,
rule on it.
Someone has to initiate the movement to go to court, but the court makes the final decision.
okay. All right, thank you.
And we're saying the council is initiating to go to court.
The city,
Council would
yeah,
petition.
the council.
Okay.
It's the members of the body, the same peers, as opposed to a of the, maybe the legislative, or the executive trying to get rid of a council person. That might not be an appropriate way to petition. You might restrict the mayor from that.
I wouldn't want to say the council could not seek the petition. I think I'd also, if there is to be an ethics board, I would be okay with them also initiating the petition on this matter in particular. So not restricting, actually creating another possible
Broadening.
avenue.
I think we can work around that, right? We know about city municipality seeks removal.
This is all the way to the bottom of the page.
We're almost done, with our agreed upon time. We do have authorities, boards, and commissions, but we're going to talk about that in conjunction, I think, with the mayor's role, who nominates to authorities, boards, and commissions. We have that coming up. It's the last one. Well, you take it then, go ahead.
The last one we have under the legislative responsibilities is, may the legislative body have authority to establish authorities, boards, and commissions? Currently, under the third-class city code optional plan A, council provides for the appointment of a city clerk, solicitor, planning board, zoning board of adjustment, or personnel board in the city, and may create commissions or other bodies with advisory powers.
I'm sorry, where are we?
The last page.
Page 12.
Page 12.
Page
Thank you.
Page 12.
Very, yeah, back of the list.
Last page.
So I think the first question here is, may they create them, right? And on the
Correct.
question of may they
That is
create
correct.
them, I feel very comfortable saying they should have the ability to create them. Are you actually asking a question about who can appoint them in this, or is it simply may they be created? Because I know
There
there
are two
can be
questions.
contention.
There are two questions there. The first one, right, the
Okay.
first one is may they create them.
And on the second one, I would say that I think today the vast majority of the positions in Lancaster are appointed by the mayor, and I think in many cases that's appropriate. I would be certainly okay with certain boards and commissions having designated council appointments as well, and I think in order to flesh out what I think that would look like, I would want to kind of go down the list, which I don't think we have time for tonight.
Well, that's part of maybe drafting too. You want to go down the list. But the authorities are created by the municipality and the Municipal Authorities Act. So that would require council action anyway, to do a new authority. That would have to be done by the.
So what you're saying is if we're talking exclusively about authorities, if the city has the power to create one and they chose to create one, in its creation, they would say, we will create this authority and X number of members will be appointed by the mayor and X number of members will be appointed by the council. It's possible.
Yeah, the Authorities Act follows that, but yeah.
Yeah, there are some limitations to this one that are governed by state laws, the Municipalities Authorities Act, the Housing and Redevelopment Authorities Act are both laws of statewide applicability. So the provisions of those statutes would apply, but this would be lesser offices, lesser boards, commissions that are unique to Lancaster.
So I'll just repeat on those. Let's say there's no controlling state law,
Right.
and we do say you can create them, and they do go ahead and create them. In their creating of these entities not controlled by state law, they would just say in the ordinance that created it, the members shall be appointed by this person, or some will be appointed by this person, some by this other body. Thank you. I'm comfortable with that.
Because this is intertwined with the mayor's power. The mayor can also have the power to create commissions and boards and appoint. And, you want to sort of delineate who gets.
Carl, are you suggesting that we define who
No,
gets to do
I
this?
wanted to make sure that the city has the authority when developing boards and commissions to dictate who appoints the members of those boards and commissions, and that it's not a requirement that all boards and commissions simply have their appointments made by the mayor. And what I'm hearing them say is, yes, that is the case. It would be up to the city when they go through the process of forming a board or commission, as long as it's not controlled by a superseding state law.
Got it.
And I guess the only other thing I'd add to that is that I saw something specifically in the Pittsburgh Ethics Commission Act, so not their charter, but it had I thought a positive and affirmative statement about the need to seek appointments based on representation of the city as a whole. And so it would not be a very bright red line of clear requirement, but it would be a guiding principle. I will find that language and send it around, because I think it would be
I like
worthwhile
that.
to write into the charter.
I think that's important.
John?
So there's, and that's sort of the order of authority. It's like authorities have a certain level of authority.
And those are most
Boards.
state law
Boards,
Local.
or local.
right, but okay, so our parking authority, right? Like
It's a state law.
that's state law.
Yeah.
Okay.
All authorities are governed by state law.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is like, is the question, the decision is whether council alone which I'm reading that to mean council without approval of the mayor, without the consent of the mayor. Is that the question?
I think a little explanation of current and what would help with the question. So under,
Well, let me just, before you start,
Yeah.
so my question is, like, there's important differences between authorities, boards, and commissions. So what I'm saying is, it would make sense to me that perhaps council by itself could create commissions, but that perhaps council, to create a board, might need council plus the mayor, or something like that.
so I understand the question.
Yeah.
I do. I think we're splitting some hairs that don't need to be split because of a practical issue. So currently, I'm not aware of any of the state laws governing authorities, commissions, or boards that doesn't require the legislative body to create the board by, or the authority, or the commission by ordinance. So in other words, even though the Parking Authority Act has provisions that say who makes the appointments, it still requires that the parking authority itself have been created by an ordinance. The same thing goes with, now, that authority is then created under that act, and maybe in accordance, it might reference another act, which is the Municipalities Authorities Act, which brings in some other organizational requirements. But in all cases at the city at this point, the only body that has the legislative authority to create a board or commission is city council. That's currently how we operate. Whether that commission and how that commission operates and/or members are appointed is either and/or controlled by the ordinance itself and/or, in the case of some authorities and some specific commissions or boards, the governing state acts, such as the Parking Authority Act, Municipalities Authority Act, and there's a number of others. But in all cases, currently under the third class city code, because we are an optional charter plan A, council as the legislative body is the only body that can create a board or commission. They are all deemed boards or commissions of city council.
Okay. Got it.
If I'm not interrupting, I wanted to read the section that I found in the Pittsburgh Code that I thought was worthwhile, that I'd like to see written into what we say about the appointments for these boards and commissions. It is strongly preferred that the membership reflect the city's diversity in regard to race, color, creed, religion, gender, familial status, sexual orientation, national origin, gender identity, age, and disability. I thought that was a good guiding principle for the filling of boards and commission seats in the city. And so,
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think that that's what we need, that's what we want in the charter, is like guiding principles instead of definitive. I don't know what else I was going to say, but you're all nodding, so I think you know what I mean.
Mr. Feldman, would you email that little snippet to PEL, just so they can just make it a little easier
And
instead
that,
of doing the searching?
in the realm of how these are created, there's room for checks and balance. So like if the mayor, like if the legislature, if the council wanted to create a board, would the mayor be able to veto it? If they didn't like it? Or-
So yeah, when you get to the point of whether the mayor has a veto power on the adoption of ordinances, typically there is a veto power, and then there is a power of council to override the veto.
Okay, and because it's an ordinance, if the citizens didn't like the authority that was created, the citizens could put something on the referendum, right?
That will be part of the home rule process, correct?
Ordinance has specific public participation requirements, advertising,
Right.
requirements that can't be adopted at the same meeting, et cetera. So there's plenty of time for public input if it's an ordinance, and that's an important point. All right. You good? You're good? You're good?
I don't know if we made any decisions.
I don't know if
I think we're through the list of the day.
can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
This was all council content. I know that Commissioner Byrd had strong feelings about the length of terms. I don't remember us discussing the length of terms. Is that something we're holding until the next meeting?
From council?
Length of
I thought
term
we-
was
We already
4
talked
years.
That
I
was,
thought we had
Okay.
quite a while
resolved
ago.
that.
We
Staggered
talked, we
in
discussed
4
it.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the
I think
second.
I remember. Yeah, okay.
It would be staggered and they would be 4-year
4
lengths.
years.
I think we won't be surprised if it comes up again.
That's good.
Commissioner Byrd also had some I thought she had some opinions about authorities, boards, and commissions.
She does.
So, yeah, I imagine we'll address this again next
Okay,
week.
well, if we have permission, we'll start drafting charter language on the council.
Appropriate.
And then you'll see all this
Again.
in text, underlining it. It won't be theoretical discussion for opinions of everybody. It'll be, what do you think of this? Because this is kind of our distillation of decisions made by the body.
Do we have to have, so when you come back with this document that's kind of like what already we've worked on, then we don't have to have a motion to go back and talk about whatever. Like if we want to talk about districting again, if we read this and we're like, oh, we want to go back to whatever it could be, whether it's that or something else, do we have to make a motion to, or maybe is that a question for you?
No.
Like, how does it work once we do get this?
Sure.
I will take that as a question, a point of order. I would say that once we start going through the charter, the draft of the charter, I would recommend that we again move to, as we are now, move to a committee of the whole and start saying, well, I want this line changed. I want he, she changed to they. And that would be the time to start saying, okay, now here it says we have 4-year terms. I think they should be 3 years and 2 months, whatever. My point is, just for the sake of argument, that would be a time I think would be the next time to bring those issues up. But not necessarily a majority, then we could, again, it's still in a draft stage. And the consensus would say, well, the consensus says this is the language that should say, or this is how the language should be changed.
I mean, ultimately, the vote that is taken is at the end of the line. The vote that really is important is once the charter is fully drafted and you vote, end of July, early August time period, that's the vote that really counts. Anything prior to that is at the chair in terms of how you want to handle deliberations and reaching a consensus.
Is there any other discussion on the deliberations on the governing body?
Yes. So I am interested in the idea of us creating a subcommittee on districting or regional representation so that we can evaluate some of the questions we have. I don't know that I want to put this up to vote without Ms. Byrd being here because I know she has strong feelings on it. But also, I don't necessarily want to put it up to a vote tonight because I really think that there's some things on the ethics level that we should discuss and explore before we go to that. Because like I said, in my mind, with the right ethics, if we do an ethics board, in my mind, maybe that is where geographic or districting type representation plays out. And to Mayor Morris's point, we have a planning commission that's 6 regional reps, 3 at large, and then 3 alternates. So I think there's some exploration to be done about the subject, and I will concede, I don't know that we will have a consensus on that being in our council itself, but I do think there are mechanisms where we should consider incorporating that. And I think the ethics realm is where especially I'm like, yeah, I think localized representation is important there too.
Can you say more about what you mean? Because I don't understand what you mean in relation to the potential for an ethics board.
So depending on the issues we aim to solve, let's just say we are going to districting and the question of who gets the final say on how these maps operate. That's maybe a place where I think the ethics board could play out in saying the ethics board would have final approval of map changes. Maybe it has to come from ethics board and then city council approves it. And these ethics board members are made up of these regions of the city. In my imagination, I envision an ethics board actually being more localized communities. So it'd be a larger board of more localized neighborhoods, but the intent is to get the general opinion and feeling across the city's neighborhoods, because sometimes you go from one place to another and the culture shifts greatly. I think ethics and culture go hand in hand, so that's one area where I think it would be important to incorporate some level of regional representation.
So that'd be a good thing for when we get a report from the Ethics Committee
Yeah.
on how to proceed or how recommendations that they would make.
And I want to be cognizant of our time, but that comment, what you just read, if that's something that is included about the commissions and boards and authorities, to me, that seems a pretty powerful place in which voters and citizens can have an impact on what's happening in our communities.
Okay. Any more just on the form of government effectively for city council? All right. So we're no longer a committee of the whole, moving back to the agenda. Next item on the agenda is subcommittee reports. Is there a report from the Public Engagement Committee?
Yeah, I sent everybody an update. Let me just pull it up and I'll try to summarize it for. So we've met 4 times and we've finalized a presentation for now, which has been shared with all the commissioners. We've given commissioners instructions and tips and talking points if they were giving the presentation. We've asked the commissioners to provide, to contact the subcommittee if they are asked to give a presentation. We just want to have a heads up and know what's going on. We've also asked that at any presentation, at least 2 commissioners are in attendance, and to please report back on the how many people attended, because I will be tracking that information. The handout has been created, and I have requested that a Spanish language translation be provided so that we have a new printout with English on the front and Spanish on the back. Our frequently asked questions is finished, but the city's communication team has not had time to put it up on the website, but we can have printed copies available for our tabling events. Planned email communications have gone out. Our first one was sent to the entire city list asking for folks to opt in to receive emails. And once folks opt in, they automatically receive a welcome email. The next email will go out sometime the week of April 29th, sort of summarizing what we're talking about right now and some other information perhaps. And we have our upcoming events, which everybody is signed up for except for one day, so I'll be pestering you again. And as I said, I'm tracking our outreach efforts, and the work to be implemented still includes civic organizational outreach, public forums and hearings, a video recording of the presentation to add to the website.
Thank you. Any questions for public engagement?
No, but kudos.
Yeah, I would just like to say I did a presentation. Thank you very much for putting together the presentation. It was very helpful, and I think it's well done to just really educate people about what we're trying to accomplish. So thank you for that.
And I did also sign up for the notifications just to be able to say, you do get notifications if you sign up.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Preamble Committee?
We have no report.
Okay. Ethics Committee?
I think that we have a conflict over the date of our next discussion, if I remember correctly, because May 2nd is a regularly scheduled.
Regular meeting.
So we'll need to find an alternate time.
Okay.
And we haven't met since I gave my previous report, so nothing beyond.
And Mr. Harris should be post whatever that the meeting's going to be canceled. Is that how it would work?
Sorry about that.
So the 2 of you would make sure you coordinate that. Yes. Budget and Finance Committee?
Yep, we had a meeting on April 17th and continue to discuss budget and finance stuff. But, we are, having some good conversations about the deadline to approve the budget. We had a long discussion about what happens if no budget is adopted by the deadline. And that's going to be something that comes back to the full commission for more discussion, because I think we had 3 different opinions on that topic.
I think we did.
So, and we're starting to get, we have the beginning of a draft of budget and finance stuff that we will be able to share with the full commission soon. So our next meeting is this coming Monday at noon.
Thank you. Any questions for budget and finance? Great, thank you. Is there any old business? Okay, hearing none. Any other business? Mr. Feldman?
Or, Ms. Cook?
No, go ahead.
Okay. We're working through a lot, and I don't want to belabor our efforts, but I do feel as though we would probably benefit from having a little more time to continue to discuss, and I wanted to ask if it would be possible for us to initiate our regularly scheduled every other day meetings earlier.
Every other week.
Oh, boy.
Please.
Every other, yes. I know that's asking a lot. 6 or 6:30 works for me. I'm lucky to, I understand it doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but I want to put that out there to the body to hear.
I mean, is that needed? Because you did say that we're somewhat on track. We just needed the one extra meeting, or like, do you feel that we should be meeting every other week now?
Oh, no, we are meeting, we're meeting twice a month. I
You're
think,
asking us
I
to
think
be,
what,
rather at 7 be our start time.
Oh,
6
he just wants to move the meeting to 6:30 or 6 o'clock.
I mean,
Yes.
yes.
I mean, I'm
Well-
happy to, but I know that not everybody can do
Yeah,
that.
not everybody can.
Why don't we make it
Oh, you
formal?
can?
Can you make a motion that we
I'll
move the
move
meeting
for
to?
6:30 and seeing how it goes, maybe if we feel we still need additional time, we can consider something else.
Okay, so there's a motion to start our meetings at 6:30. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? I will ask, just for one clarifying point, would there be any problems on a scheduling point if we move the next meeting to 6:30 instead of 7? Okay. Any other? Okay. No, we have to vote.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
My question, I mean, does that feel helpful to you? Does that seem necessary and helpful?
I think the longer you have time to talk in the session, when you have a head of steam going and you don't interrupt it, is to your benefit.
Okay. Thank you.
Will we waste a half an hour? No.
Right. Are you worried about our ability to finish on time?
Not right now, no.
You're still feeling good, like we're gonna get done on it.
You'll see what I mean when you get to the mayor discussion. A lot of the decisions you're making now refer to the mayor also. So we don't have to go over that ground again. We just have to go over those things that are unique to the mayor's power.
Well, I will.
But pending people's availability, I don't object to this. And if we discover that that we're in great shape, we can always go back to 7 o'clock.
Or leave early.
Or leave early.
Or, yes.
I'm more in favor of 6:30 and leave early, but I'll ask for the call for the vote. All in favor?
Did Ms. Cook have a question? Did you have a comment?
Not about that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes, so the plan is the meetings at this point will now be scheduled to start at 6:30 instead of 7.
You'll have to re-advertise that.
And I'll work with Mr. Harris about handling that on the city end.
And I just had one question for Commissioner Byrd, who was unable to be here tonight, and we got a lot of discussion in. Will she be able to add her consensus, whether or not she felt, okay, at the next meeting, will that be, okay,
Sure.
okay,
If I heard you right, yeah, she's still an active part of the discussion.
yeah.
If there's something that she feels that we haven't decided, or if you want to review it when it's in draft form. Right now, I'd like to move away from the question and answer session on council to give you draft language so you can see what it looks like. And then, if there's questions of the decisions, you'll see it in plain language, as opposed to, the next question and answer series is going to be on the controller and the mayor.
But you would probably entertain an email coming if she had questions.
Always, from everyone.
Okay. All right, very-
Everyone here, most people have called me, Fred, Lynn, just, if you don't have my cell phone number, please call me.
Okay,
Please, never feel worried about calling us.
okay.
Anytime of the day or night.
Anytime.
Anytime. That doesn't mean you'll get an answer, but anytime you can call me, your phone works.
If you do it Zoom, you get to meet his grandson,
Yeah.
which is always a trip. Okay,
That happens a lot.
Sorry.
yes,
Commissioner Cook actually reminded me of something I wanted to ask. This is more for like city staff. I know at one point there at least was intention to have a working telecom system integrated into all of this, because I agree with you completely about the point earlier about like you have to be a participant in these meetings. But I know that like the first time I tried to participate remotely, we tried using the telecom system, and I guess it failed. So then we switched to this whole calling people on their cell phones and like using a mix of mediums to try and make sure you're an active participant. Just like a question to the city, I don't know which staff member, thank you.
The mayor.
Is there any like timeline for getting that back in place? Because I think it'd be an asset to many bodies.
Yes, is the short answer. And we are hoping to be able to unveil some of those changes with the dedication of the chamber after Nelson Polite Senior in October. We have been working with facilities to be able to actually replace this unit, change out the screen, improve our sound system, and to have more of a control center in the back of the room to be able to aid in the facilitation of this. I will also say that these expenses will be primarily covered by the Polite family in honor of Nelson, and that this is a tremendous gift to the city and our residents as we continue to cut costs, because without that, we would be still suffering with the same system. So we really are grateful to the Polite family and look forward to the dedication, which will be on Friday, I believe October the 4th, here in council chambers, and there'll be more information that's coming about that.
Thank you.
I say kudos to the Polite family.
Yes.
One item I have to add, since our next meeting is next Thursday at 6:30. Normally, I send out a request on Friday for agenda items. I'm making the request right now, the Friday before the meeting, so that I can have the agenda posted first thing in the beginning of the week. So I'm verbally asking if there are any agenda items for next week's meeting, please get them to me so I can get the agenda, Mr. Harris, promptly. Any other old business or any other business for the good of the commission and the city? Okay. Public comments. So our second round of public comments, just a reminder that we do have a means on the website for making any comments that you have. It's quite active, just so everybody is aware of that. Does anybody else would like to speak? Great. A reminder, your name and the street on which you live, and 3 minutes, please.
Hi, Tina Bardell. I'm a representative from Lancaster County Association of Realtors, and I'm chair of the Government Affairs Committee. I applaud you guys. I know you have a very difficult job, but sitting back here listening, you're really getting into the weeds on some of this. The whole point with term limits, you're looking at this like the federal government. This isn't the federal government. This is a local part-time position that we're electing these people to hold. This is not a career, and by not giving term limits is actually limiting the people's voices. If the same person is going to be sitting in there, they're a career politician. We deal with that in the federal government. It's not working. We don't want to experience that here. Think of it like the township supervisors or the borough managers. They're elected, they're part-time. A lot of them hold another position. Going back to what happened last week, again, about we should not be giving them benefits. This is not their career. It should not be a career. The mayor, that's a full-time position. City council is not. I encourage you to look at a term limit, 2 years. POTUS has a 2-year term limit. Why shouldn't we do that for our local politicians? Also, resigning from elected offices before running for another one. If somebody's running for 2 offices at the same time, why couldn't they run for 3? Why couldn't they run for 4? I think that you really need to limit them. You know, you have to have what is the commitment to run versus the risk of losing. If they're running for 2 and 3 offices and they get to choose the one they want, again, where's the voice of the people? If the people elected them to do a job and they say, no, I choose not to do that one, I want to do the other one. Where are we representing the people? So I'm just encouraging you to really consider the term limits and to maybe look back at being able to run for more than one office at a time.
Thank you. Any other comments?
John Gavea, 100 block of East Orange. At this point, I want to point out a concern. As some of you know, I thought about joining this group in the early stage, decided, no, I better not, and I'm glad I did. But my concern is, I thought there was going to be a lot more discussion about a possible earned income tax because the city is facing a shortfall in a couple of years. I appreciate the fact that everything you're talking about in terms of the organization of the government is important. But the finances of the city are critical. And time for this commission is short. So I hope sometime very soon, there's going to be some serious discussion and consideration of what the tax structure of the city is going to look like.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
I second it.
Without objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Damn.
No, I was gonna say.
He is. Yes, when that affected.
6 down by 3.
Saw that.
We should set.
Fred and I were at the same spring training game.
Yeah?